Welcome to the Dr. Maria Show. I want to thank Joe Hoft for covering me last week while I was in Rome. You know, it's the second time in a year that I've been in Rome, and I wish it was strictly pleasure, but it was business. But both times I was there, I had, during my little bit of downtime, a spectacular experience. I happen to be Roman Catholic, and when I was there in February, the Jubilee had started. Pope Francis, prior to his death, in 2024, he said 2025 will be the year of the Jubilee. What is that? It's a special holy year where Catholics are encouraged to renew their faith, to offer forgiveness, to forgive themselves if they have sinned, and to try to make a pilgrimage to Rome. It started in December of 2024 with the opening of the holy doors to St. Peter's Basilica. So I have to say, even though my schedule was so tight both times, February and last week, I had to go through those doors at St. Peter's Basilica, and it was a beautiful experience for me. Now, this time I was back and I noticed all the young people. I mean, the streets were packed, but you could tell they were in large groups. Well, quickly, I learned that that particular week, from July 28th to August 3rd, was the week of the Jubilee of Youth. Well over 140 countries were represented. Young people, there's, from teens up until like the mid-30s came out. I don't know how they all were able to afford to come to Rome, but they did it. They came and they had their pilgrimage. And these young people, it actually gets me a little bit emotional to see so many young people making a pilgrimage of faith, of hope, was quite a beautiful thing. Part of the pilgrimage to Rome is visiting particular basilicas. I myself visited 3 out of the 4, St. Peter's, St. Mary Maggiore, St. John Lutheran, and there's one more that I guess I'm going to have to go back to Rome to go and visit. But it was such a wonderful thing. And Pope Leo, right? Fairly new Pope, an American Pope, is really resonating with the young people. These kids, like, the summer weather in Rome is brutal. I mean, hot. And the lines to get into some of these basilicas were literally, I'm not exaggerating, over a mile long. And I would ask, I wasn't going in any of the churches. I only had a few hours off from business, but I was driving around and I asked a couple times at 2 of the churches, what is the anticipated wait? How long are people going to wait in line? Over 4 hours in that brutal sun. Never did I see the young people complaining. They started singing in their native tongues. A lot of them, you could tell it was probably religious songs, and they were so polite, and it was a beautiful thing. And of course, Pope Leo had to see them at the Vatican outside St. Peter's. Let's go to clip 1.
If you truly want to encounter the risen Lord, then listen to His word. which is the gospel of salvation. Reflect on your way of living. Seek justice in order to build a more humane world. Serve the poor, and so bear witness to the good that we would always like to receive from our neighbors.
Large crowd. They say anywhere from 800,000 to 1,000,000 young people. Of course, not just young people. If you were in the neighborhood, you're going to want to go to this historic event. But it was quite beautiful. And certainly he had a message, as you just heard, about serving the poor. I've been on a board for the Bishop's Charitable Assistance Fund in Manchester, New Hampshire for well over a decade. And that's a tenet of the money we raise goes to feeding the poor, clothing the poor, all the basic tenets of Jesus's teachings. So Pope Leo, articulated this to all of these young people, and he also warned against the use of social media. Let's go to clip 2.
Today we find ourselves in a new culture, deeply characterized and formed by technology. It is up to us, it's up to each one of you to ensure that this culture remains human. Science and technology influence the way we live in the world, even affecting how we understand ourselves, how we relate to God, how we relate to one another. But nothing that comes from man and his creativity should be used to undermine the dignity of others.
Even if you're not a Roman Catholic, even if you don't even believe in any type of a God, these are sound words, right? We've all have bared witness to the downfall of technology. There are certainly great things. If you wanted to learn more about the Jubilee, right now you could go on your browser, DuckDuckGo, whatever you use for a browser, and you can look it up, and you have things at your fingertips. But how people communicate now, especially our young people, they're becoming isolationists in their bedrooms, not knowing how to really have a conversation or really disagree. It's okay to disagree. I grew up in the Catholic system, Catholic schools. And I was talking to someone recently how I actually don't know a lot about the Bible. So the person said to me, I thought you went to Catholic schools. And I said, yes, I don't know if it was the times, the late 60s, early 70s. Our religion classes were about being good to other human beings, being patient, sticking up for those that are oppressed. And also we had a lot of teachings about if a group of people, and of course they would relate it to our age, were around picking on one person or talking about another person, not only should we not jump in and join that group, but it was compelled upon us to stop that group, to have a voice of goodness. And those are the things we learned. And nowadays, young people don't know how to disagree, right? Look at it how it is politically. If you happen to vote for a particular party, you were ostracized. Your job got phone calls. I mean, we really need to turn this around. And I'm happy to have Michael Hitchborn back with us from the Lepanto Institute to talk about what young people are facing today. Welcome back, Michael.
Thanks so much for having me back. It's wonderful to be here.
Michael, as you know, young people today are facing things you and I never really had to face. We would go outside, we'd play with other kids. Yeah, you get into little disagreements, you forgave each other, you went on. It's so different now. Not only how kids are getting their news of the day, which isn't always accurate, but it's harsh out there, and we've seen an increase in mental illness, anxiety, depression, record numbers. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think that a lot of it stems from the fact that young people have lost a lot of focus on the purpose and meaning of life. And this disconnect that you mentioned, that was also mentioned by Pope Leo, has to do with the fact that they are isolated. They don't have real human interactions. They become very anxious when they deal with confrontation or any kind of disagreement. They think that if somebody disagrees with me, well, they hate me, or they must hate me, or there's something wrong with me. Why don't I agree with them? And they've lost not just the sense of the humanity that comes with dealing with the bumps and bruises that come along with life just in fumbling through what we do, but they've lost their spiritual focus, and the spiritual focus of having surety with regard to where life is going. What is the purpose of the mission and the journey that we're on? If they don't have that knowledge and they don't have that assurance, and they lose sight of the end of life, what happens at the end, what happens after the end, well, that increases their anxiety. So a lot of it is a catechetical problem. It's a philosophical problem. And it's a problem that stems directly from the anxiety associated with not knowing or not even understanding the end and purpose and development of human life. They really don't understand it. And I think that that's the essence of the problem.
Yeah, I agree with you, Michael. And certainly I've talked about the Jubilee, which is directed towards Roman Catholics. But I want all children, right, to have good relationships, to be able to agree to disagree, to have healthy body image, healthy conversations, and for them to know the Lord. If it's not brought in their family, how else? Let's look at clip 3 and what Pope Leo asks of these young people.
In our continuing catechesis on the Jubilee theme of Jesus Christ, our hope, today we conclude our reflections on Jesus' public ministry with the healing of a deaf man who had a speech impediment. As we heard in the gospel reading, in a gesture of closeness, Jesus took the man aside and healed him with his words and his touch. Today, many people isolate themselves in their desperation. They seem to have lost their ability to communicate, perhaps because they have often felt wounded and misunderstood in their interactions with others. We are in need of moments of intimacy with Jesus so that we can hear him say, Ephata, meaning be opened. He enables us to look beyond our own troubles and to put our listening and communication skills at the service of others. Just as the deaf man's friends brought him to Jesus, so we too are called to become witnesses of Jesus' healing power and to bring others to him so that they can listen to his words, experience his touch, be filled with hope, and be healed.
This was so beautiful. The way he said, you guys are experiencing something so beautiful. You've come on this pilgrimage. You've left your home. You're experiencing such love. These kids had something in their eyes. It was that spirit, that Holy Spirit was within them. And Pope Leo is saying, go out and spread the word. What else can we do to spread the word?
Well, it's, I think that the most important thing that we can do goes back to what St. Teresa of Calcutta said. She said, if you want to bring happiness to the whole world, Go home and love your family. That very phrase right there, what she is saying is that the family is the building block of society. If you want to change the world and you want to bring happiness to the world, have happiness in your own home. St. John Paul II, he said, as the family goes, so goes the nation, and so goes the whole world in which we live. And if we want to, I can take it several steps further. St. Charbel, he said this is a very interesting statement from him. He said, the family is the basis in the Lord's plan, and all the forces of evil aim to demolish it. Uphold your families and guard them against the grudges of the evil one by the presence of God. And Pope St. Pius, or not saint yet, but I hope someday soon, Pius XII, he said, the family is not meant for society. Rather, it is the society that is meant for the family. Everything comes back to the family. All of our understanding of the problems in the world and the best way to solve the problems in the world starts and ends with the family. If you develop children who are holy and striving for holiness, they will in turn marry someone who is also holy and striving for holiness, and they will raise good, godly, holy children. And those children will go into the workforce, and they'll become priests, and they will become politicians, and they'll become social workers, and the people that help to establish the good and real touch that Pope Leo XIV was talking about of Christ in the world. So it all starts and ends with the family. If we're going to see any kind of transformation, we have to raise good and holy families. And how do you do that? Well, husband and wife have to come together, and they have to have a unified front when it comes to the faith, when it comes to what it means to be an integral part of the family. How do you show love to one another and then therefore show love to your children? And then I want to quote again, Pope Pius XII, he said, there is no surer means of calling down God's blessings upon the family than by the daily recitation of the Holy Rosary. And I would exhort everyone who is Catholic, and then if you're not Catholic, start anyway, because it's a great practice. Pray the Rosary together as a family. And I guarantee you, you will see a transformative effect very quickly within your children, within your relationship with your spouse.
My goodness, Michael, that is so beautiful. Unfortunately, there's a lot of children in families that are abusive. You know,
Yep.
we've seen this explosion of child trafficking really through our southern border, but it's throughout the United States now. And I was reading about a case where 7 adults were arrested and more were going to be arrested. They had these kids as young as 3 years old up to 13, tied in beds, and multiple times a day they'd come and sexually abuse these children and invite other people, get paid to do it. I'm thinking about all those children. Of course, we have to have a righteous and just government. They don't have to be a religious government, just righteous and just. And not to really place politics in this, but this was my biggest problem under the Biden administration, was twofold for me. That southern border, because I was told what was happening to those children, even en route to the United States, and all these politicians knew it and did nothing because of politics. So I got angry and I bled for these children. And then the other thing that really made me upset is how we celebrated killing children in the womb. My goodness, when Cuomo was governor of New York and their state legislation decided to kill a baby up until 9 months, they celebrated. He got a standing ovation. Buildings in New York were lit up.
Yep.
And I said, the devil is here. I got renewed faith seeing all these young people. I really did. Do you think we're going to have a resurgence and, if you will, a rebellion against those kind of evil tenets in our society?
We're already seeing it. I mean, how many Planned Parenthoods have shut down their offices all over the United States ever since Donald Trump and his administration defunded Planned Parenthood? Thanks be to God. How many different organizations have we seen that had been promoting the woke ideologies, the pro-LGBT, the trans nonsense? A lot of them are losing their support, their funding. I've seen a number of CEOs, including the CEO of Jaguar, got sacked because of their support for these ideologies and this transgender garbage that's harming children. And you want to talk about the child abuse? Let's talk about the child abuse of not just the parents. I mean, there are parents who are part of this, but the schools, the nurses, the doctors' offices who are saying, well, it might be good to put this young prepubescent child on puberty blockers so that we can determine what sex they are later on in life. And then maybe even talk about proposing surgical operations to mutilate their genitals. I mean, it's terrible what they're doing. And with the kids, they're getting mixed messages from society, from their schools, from books in the library, and they're being told, well, maybe you're not the sex that you were born with. You might be something else. And the kid the anxiety wells up because they have no idea how to even formulate a thought rooted in reality. If I can't even determine that I am who I am or what I am, well, then how can I possibly have any understanding of truth in anything? So that anxiety, that abuse, it all has got to stop. But I think that, yes, we are absolutely seeing a shift in the culture and a shift in the perspective and the persuasion of the American people saying, enough. We need to have these children grow up in a stable household. We need these children to have a father and a mother, not two of one kind. So we are seeing a change and we are seeing a shift, and that line is becoming just much more stark day after day.
Great news. And I agree about this transgenderism. It sometimes was the parents. Sometimes the parents were manipulated by psychiatrists and doctors. I never understood it because you're right. These are children, and we were allowing, and I say we because I'm in healthcare, to give these kids puberty blockers, sometimes having surgery of mutilation. It's disgusting, but we've seen Tennessee now ban it, that it is illegal. So if any hospital tries to do that kind of surgery or any provider tries to prescribe it, they could face jail time. And now New Hampshire has gone along. I would love to see all 50 states saying, we're not going to tolerate this kind of mutilation to our young people. And just remember, Michael, these poor kids, whatever they're going through, in their young teenage years, they don't like the way they look, they're feeling awkward. All of a sudden they get praise. If they're a girl and they cut off their hair and they say, oh, now I'm a boy. Oh, everybody praises them. They'll get on the nightly TV show. The talk shows all say, oh, isn't this great? We're doing all these things for the transgender community. We have to remember this is still seen as a mental illness. In my field of medicine, it is called gender dysmorphia. And you don't give drugs, you don't do surgery, you have therapy, and you also, as you pointed out, as a family, you build up that child, that child is good, and you will feel awkwardness through your teenage years. That's life, So I am so happy that you're seeing this change because I'm seeing it, I'm feeling it. Yep. So we need to bring God back into our lives. It's been pushed out of everything. Now tell me a little bit about, in my audience, please, about the Lepanto Institute.
Sure. I founded the Lepanto Institute 10 years ago. I had been working the pro-life movement, and as I was doing so, one of my tasks was to look into organizations that claimed to be Catholic or Christian that were actually operating in contravention with Catholic teaching with regard to the question of life. So I started investigating various organizations like the Catholic Campaign for Human Development and Catholic Relief Services, and I started looking into a plethora of aid and development agencies like CARE International and the Adventist Relief Agency, Save the Children, and a host of others. And as I was looking into them, I found that there was a consistent pattern of finances going towards either the promotion of abortion, contraception, homosexuality, and Marxism, or they were putting in projects that were doing that kind of thing. They were implementing certain projects that were then taking that idea and running with it. So I started putting together a series of reports on these various agencies because I figured if people are giving to these organizations, they might want to know how their money is being used. So we at the Lepanto Institute, we started this in 2015. We created a charity reports list with over 150 different agencies that we have done deep dive investigations into. Some of these organizations, multiple reports like Catholic Relief Services. And we put together reports and a report card indicating whether these organizations are supporting the bad things that I mentioned or not. And as you can see, we mark them either safe or not safe with the basic reason. And then if you click the name of the organization, you can actually go to the report page so that you can understand why we mark them either safe or not safe. And it'll give you all of the information as well as links to the evidence with screenshots of the evidence itself. So that's what we do primarily. But we also conduct all sorts of other investigations. I have a huge report coming out tomorrow. It is about the Archbishop of Santa Fe, New Mexico, and an individual that he elevated to several high posts within the diocese who should never have been allowed to even become a priest in the diocese. It's a pretty awful story, but it's a huge expose, and it shows the poor judgment on the part of that particular archbishop. And that it's going to be a huge story when it comes out. So we have articles and various other related investigations that we conduct as well.
Well, that's wonderful, Michael. Thank you so much for what you do for creating the Lepanto Institute and just for your commentary. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me back. It's been a pleasure.
Great. So, flesh-eating bacteria, what is it? 8 people are dead now in 2 Gulf Coast states. What can you do to be safe? Let's look at clip number 6.
Tonight, a warning from Florida health officials after 4 people died and at least 11 others have gotten sick from a rare flesh-eating bacteria found in warm coastal waters. Of the dozens of species of the bacteria, it's Vibrio vulnificus that has health officials worried, as infections can be severe and life-threatening for some. It can spread from raw seafood, mainly oysters, or through an open wound in direct contact with seawater. Bernie Stewart contracted the bacteria 6 years ago. The charter boat captain says the infection led to a 2-week medically induced coma.
When I got out of the water, I had a blister about the size of a $50 just above my ankle. My skin got real red and hot.
Doctors say you can still enjoy the beach with precaution, but in the summer months, experts say the warm waters during hurricane season can create the perfect breeding ground for the bacteria.
Dr. Norman Beatty says recognizing symptoms like pain, swelling, or redness near an open wound, or even blistering, can be the difference between life and death.
Who's most at risk?
Well, people who have immune compromising conditions and people who have liver disease. Anyone can get this infection, and sometimes it can be pretty mild, but it can spread pretty rapidly.
Doctors recommend covering open wounds with bandages and clean cuts and scratches thoroughly if exposed to seawater. And if you are at risk, avoid eating raw seafood. George Solis, NBC News, Miami.
We thank you for.
I don't have much to add to that. Just being cautious. It doesn't mean you can't go swimming or you can't eat seafood. But if you have other autoimmune type disease or just under the weather, really avoid at this time the seafood. And if you have an open wound, they talk about covering that open wound before you go into the water. Can I tell you, that bandage is going to get wet. Nothing is leak proof in most bandages. So that water can get into that wound. So if you have an open wound, do not go into the water until it is healed. Well, we are going to take a short break, and I'm really excited to tell you about what I was doing in Rome when we return.
Whether it's being a weekend warrior or spending time with your family, feeling your best is the key to doing the things you love. That's why I'm excited to tell you about Nirvanta. It's a natural solution designed to help you stay active and live well naturally. Nirvanta is a topical blend of all natural essential oils like frankincense, myrrh, and a proprietary gold standard plant stock extract. It's perfect for your hands, feet, knees, back, or anywhere else that needs a little extra care. Use Nirvanta proactively as part of your daily maintenance routine, and you're guaranteed you're going to feel the difference. Simply massage Nirvanta in for at least 60 seconds, 2 to 3 times a day to get the best results. And if you're not completely satisfied, you get your money back. No questions asked. There's simply no risk and no reason not to try Nirvanta today. Right now, you get 15% off with code Lindell exclusively at nirvantahealth.com. So stop reaching out for that medicine cabinet, get Nirvanta instead, and experience the difference. Go to nirvantahealth.com, use code Lindell to get 15% off today. Nirvanta Health. Live well naturally.
Welcome back to the show. So I was in in Rome last week for a very, very important gathering, and it was all about a free Iran. You've heard me talk multiple times about Maryam Rajavi, who's the president-elect of, let's say, a de facto government. So what would happen if the Ayatollah all of a sudden wasn't there, and the mullahs and the Revolutionary Guard, all of which are very, very evil people, oppress anybody with a different point of view and really have taken women back ages, to the Stone Ages. And so Maryam Rajavi and a bunch of Iranian dissidents, they have special committees. So if they were ever called to come in and be the government in Iran, they would stabilize the government. They would run the infrastructure, the finances with this 10-point plan that is very similar to our Bill of Rights in the United States. And what I like about this group is that they say, we don't want to be dictators, not at all. We want to be a free Iran. And as soon as we stabilize it, 6 months, we'll have a free and fair election. If you like what we're doing, vote us in for more time. If not, vote us out. But the other thing that I'm very attracted to is the fact that it's run by women. This would be unheard of in the Middle East. But this group has been terrorized. The National Council on the Resistance of Iran, the MEK, there's a few other names. They have propaganda against them all the time. And if you speak out, you are at risk of being jailed, tortured, or even murdered. I am so happy. From Paris, she's staying up awful late just to join our show, is Zolal Habibi, who is the NCRI, the National Council Resistance of Iran Foreign Affairs Committee Chair. Welcome to the show.
Member of the Foreign Affairs Committee.
Excellent, excellent. Zolal, explain to us what it's like to be a woman in Iran.
Well, unfortunately, as you pointed out, Maria, one of the main pillars that this regime has been able to keep its grip on power as a dictatorship, it's based its system on 2 pillars. One is suppression internally in Iran, and the other is export of terrorism. So when it comes to suppression internally, the first target group were the women of Iran. When you have 50% of the population under your suppression, then you can control the entire society. And unfortunately, that is what Khomeini did from the outset. And unfortunately, women in Iran, as you said, they're treated as second-class citizens. They're denied the most basic rights. Just things that we take for granted, maybe in the US or anywhere in the free world, that the women in Iran are denied. They're even denied the right to, like for instance, get a divorce, the right to have custody of their children, the right to even attend their father's funeral without the permission of their husband, or even travel, anything, just like basics, really basics. They're denied those rights, and it's systematic. It's been written into law, and that's what makes it devastating, that these backward mindsets of the mullahs have been written into law, and it's the constitution of the country. But I think what's important to also note is that the women of Iran have never given in into these policies of the regime, and they have always resisted from the first months after the revolution, when Khomeini tried to bring the forced hijab. What is interesting is actually the fact that at that time, the first people who opposed the forced hijab laws were the MEK, who were a Muslim group, who had a scarf themselves, but they said, there's no force in religion. No one should be dictating to any woman how to dress, be it whatever dress they choose to wear. This is not something that you can, meddle in. And so from day one, they stood in front of that. And we see the continuation of this resistance in every form throughout society in Iran. You see, the world saw in 2022 that the women of Iran came to the streets. I mean, the entire population came, but especially the role of women was seen and took center stage. But this is something that has precedent. If you look, as you just mentioned, for the last over 30 years, the Iranian resistance has been led by women. And it has set a precedent for people in Iran. So even though they are living under this extreme suppression, women in Iran know that they have in front of them role models who have broken all glass ceilings and have, been able to prevail and reach, new heights. And so that in itself has inspired Iranian women to stand. What is interesting is that Iran, everyone, I think, the majority of people know that Iran has the highest brain drain in the world. They're very educated. Iranians are very educated. But what's interesting is that in the universities, the ratio of women to men is more. There are more women who pursue higher education in universities. And that's not because there's positive discrimination for them. It's because they see it as a way of defying the regime and the mullah. So they use every possibility to resist in face of this regime.
The world mourned when a young lady, 16 years old, Armida, was beaten savagely because she didn't wear a hijab. She died, and people took such risks inside Iran and protested. It was amazing to see almost in every region of Iran, these young people coming out and saying, no, they're trying to do it peacefully, but it often backfires on them. Some people in Iran are living now in such poverty. They're selling organs. It is such an oppressive regime. I don't know, but it's like talking to them like you and I are talking is not going to work. They are so deep-seated, the mullahs, the Ayatollah, even the Revolutionary Guard, in this religious fanaticism, if that's a word. What are the ways that people can have a change in their government?
Well, I think you just pointed out that you were at an event in Rome this week, and there I think Mrs. Bajavi actually pointed out this. She said, The message of the Iranian people is clear. Is the solution a war? No. Is the solution appeasement with the mullahs? No. Is this regime, is it possible to reform this regime from within? No. The solution is supporting the Iranian people and their organized resistance, because we think that the Iranian people have the capacity and the capability to bring about change. Unfortunately, there has been a lot of foreign aid to this regime, keeping it in power throughout these years. And unfortunately, the Iranian resistance has been the bargaining chip on the table. So the Iranian people have paid a grave price. You pointed out to the executions. Right now is the anniversary of the 1988 massacre, where 30,000 people were executed in just 5-6 weeks in Iran. With that, Khomeini was able to spread complete fear in society, because every family in Iran, they either knew someone who had been executed or they had lost someone themselves. So with that, Khomeini was able to instill fright and, just taking away people's hope, really, for change at that time. And this continues to this day. Right now, August, we've entered August, so it's been 1 year since Pezeshkian has come into office as the so-called president of the regime. There have been 1,515 executions recorded to date. That, I think, speaks.
My God.
1
That
year.
is crazy statistics. And 2 people just, a few weeks ago were executed too. Opposition
Sunday.
resistance people.
Last Sunday, Mehdi Hassani and Behruz Ehsani, who were 2 political prisoners, they were executed only for affiliation with this resistance movement. And unfortunately, 14 others, their lives are in jeopardy right now, and they face execution sentences too. And that's something that we're trying to draw attention to. But unfortunately, just even today, just this weekend, I think there were over, in total, about 20 executions over this weekend, just in the past 2-3 days. So the regime, they feel right now, because it's in a very weak position, it tries to keep itself afloat by spreading fear in society with executions, even public executions, which are being carried out. So the regime wants to, be able to, they know that the only way they can keep their power, their grip on power, is to spread fear in society and through suppression. So internally with suppression, and as I said, externally with the use of terrorism and supporting terror around the world and creating chaos. So that's how the regime has been able to stay afloat for 46 years.
And we have a clip of the conference in Rome. Let's go to clip 4. These conferences, I've been to a few. I've been to a few in Paris, and they're solemn, yet there's a lot of hope that is given as well, because there are people who will risk everything to bring about a free Iran. Look at these pictures. 30,000 people were massacred in 1988. Like the world, we talk about these things that happen, in Israel, that happened October 7th, which we're still mourning from that brutal attack. The amount of people who have given their lives opposing the evil regime, and there you can see in the greenish color was Mariam Rajavi, who is the president-elect, a very bright and courageous woman. And this group, the MEK, is really all about peace and freedom and individual liberty. But they are tough. But the propaganda that's been used against them, look at, we even had it in our country, and you know this, Zolel, that Bill Clinton once put them on the terrorist watch list. There was no evidence they were a terrorist group at all. I guess you could say the Sons of Liberty were a terrorist group against the English Empire. These are people we hold up on a pedestal in the United States. The Sons of Liberty brought about our revolution against the English Empire. And the MEK didn't do anything, but Bill Clinton, and this is typical of the Western governments, they use what's called an appeasement strategy. Well, I give them what they want. They'll leave us alone. You know, it's over there. It doesn't really affect us. And it never, ever works. What are some of the ways we can continue to educate the world on what is happening inside Iran?
Just to go back on what you said, I remember in 1997 when we were placed on the terrorist list, I was a teenager in high school at the time, and I remember thinking, like, how is that even possible? How is it that we are fighting for the same values that, like, back then in school they were teaching us, you know, this is what our founding fathers fought for in the US and whatnot. And I was like, we're doing the same thing. And how is it that the MEK is being placed on the terrorist list? And for me, it was quite personal too, because my father is one of the people who was killed in the summer of 1988. And my father was a prominent writer and a human rights activist. And so I was introduced to human rights situation in Iran from very early on, from like when I was 4 or 5 years old. And I grew up with that as part of, you know, the reality that we face. But I always thought, well, we're here in the US and that's in Iran. I never thought that we would be directly affected by that until my father was killed. So I remember back then thinking, like, how is that even possible? Like, you know, are these not, like, do we not stand for our values? Are we willing to sell our values so easily to appease the mullahs? And back then it was Khatami. Khatami was in reaction to the NCRI choosing Mrs. Rajavi as a president-elect. That made a huge, like, that was huge for Iran back then, for Iranian people. They gained, like, the sense of hope again. This is especially, like, after 1988, Khomeini was able to spread so much fear in society. And then 1993, Mrs. Rajavi becomes the president-elect of the movement. And, like, this whole movement starts and this momentum, and people gained hope again. So they needed something to rival that. So they brought Khatami, and they said, well, look, he's a moderate. And then they brought, you know, discussion of civilizations and whatnot to try to, you know, and but Iran was pushing the U.S. government, saying, well, if you want to enter dialogue with us, yeah, we are open to moderation and reform, but you need to show your goodwill for it. And that's why that LA Times article exists, that the U.S. State Department spokesperson said, as a goodwill gesture to the newly elected reformist president of Iran, Khatami, that MEK has been placed on the terrorist list. So unfortunately, as I said, the Iranian people have been used as a bargaining chip at the table of negotiations each and every time, and we've paid a grave price for it. But I think what needs to be done is, today, I think every single one of us can play a role, no matter where we are or who we are, by raising awareness first, you know, echoing the message of the Iranian people, like, that there is a third option, that, you know, the solution is not, the Iranian people are not looking for foreign intervention or troops on the ground, nothing like that. They're not asking for funding. They're not asking for weapons. They're not asking for anything. So on the other hand, they're just asking to end this policy of appeasement with the mullahs. So the solution to Iran is not war or appeasement, but there is a solution, and that's supporting the Iranian people and their organized resistance, which has shown in the past, 4 decades that it has the capability and the capacity to bring about change. And as you said, you pointed out to Mrs. Rajavi's 10-point plan. But aside from the 10-point plan, the NCRI actually has a roadmap that it has been, written out since 1983. And in it says, well, there will be a 6-month interim government, and then there will be these elections where there will be a constitutional assembly is organized, which will be writing the new constitution. And then after 2 years, there will be those elections where people can make their choice. So, and what's important is, I think, with the NCRI, it's not just mere words. They've shown it in practice. I think that the fact that for the past 44 years, through thick and thin, this movement has stood its ground and has continued its fight against the mullahs with great sacrifice and great price. I think that is what has regained the trust of the Iranian people, because unfortunately that's what Khomeini stole, people's trust. And people started to, when you see a movement that has sacrificed 120,000 of its members for freedom in Iran without wanting anything in return, that is something that you can trust. And that's why people have so much faith in Mrs. Rajavi, because they've seen her selfless dedication, the sacrifices that she has made, and the sacrifice unfortunately, I'm not the only person in this movement who has paid that price. Mrs. Rajavi herself, 2 of her sisters have been killed, by the Shah Savak, and one by under Khomeini. Her younger sister, who was killed in 1982, she was pregnant at the time, and that is, the realities of this regime. So every one of us have our stories, our loved ones that we've lost, but that has never put a limit in how much we're willing to dedicate to this movement. And in fact, I think what's important also is, you said this is a movement that seeks peace. One fun fact here, there are 25 commissions in the committees in the NCRI, right? What's interesting is, for these committees represent like the ministries in a government, right? And in the NCRI, there's no defense committee, but there is a peace committee, because that's the basis that it was built on. And that's actually, it was formed because at that time it was the Iran-Iraq war, and the people who actually forced Khomeini to end the war is this movement. And in fact, from 1983, when Iraq, withdrew from Iran in 1982, this was the movement that, went forward with a peace plan and presented a peace plan. And at that time, 5,000 parliamentarians had supported that peace plan. Like today, that over 4,000 parliamentarians have voiced their support for Mrs. Rajavi's 10-point plan. And we've also seen, over 120 heads of state from different countries who have shown their support for this movement. So it has a very vast support.
It certainly does. And in our country, because I've been to many of the conferences, I see politicians from both sides of the aisle, which is often nice when we can come together. Well, I thank you so much for staying up late to join us, and I wish you all the luck. And I'm going to continue to promote the peace in Iran and a new government. I'm not shy to say Ayatollah's got to go. But thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be with you.
So, the show is only an hour and I can only cover so much. So I encourage you to go on the website of the NCRI US and get your own information. But wouldn't it be nice to have a peaceful world? Iran has been the leading sponsor of terrorists that have killed Americans. They are so destructive. So let's hope for peace. God bless you. God bless the people of Iran. They are so courageous in their fight. I think as an American, we identify with that, right? We're so proud of our history. And let's wish Iranians the best of luck in trying to get a stable government. Good night, and I will see you on Wednesday.